This is Dr. Radio, powered by the NYU Langone Medical Center, and we welcome you to this program. Our guest today, Wendy Maltz, is an author, speaker, and sex therapist who's in private practice with her husband, Larry Maltz, in Eugene, Oregon. And she's here today to talk about her book, The Porn Trap, The Essential Guide to Overcoming Problems Caused by Pornography. Hi, Wendy.
Hi. Hello. Happy to be here.
Well, we're very, very glad to help you, and to have you, rather, and to have you help our listeners, some of whom may have partners who are really into porn, but they're not. And we would invite them to share their stories with us and ask you, our expert, all their questions. What is it that got you to write the book, The Porn Trap, Wendy?
Well, I've been a sex and relationship therapist for about 30 years now. And what I started noticing back around 2000, as the Internet became more popular, clients started coming in complaining of pornography problems in large numbers. I mean, every week I'd get several calls, and it was kind of like, what's going on? Did somebody put something in the, water supply?
No, they put something on the Internet.
And before then, pornography would come up occasionally in doing marital or sex and relationship therapy, but not that frequently. Often it was couples trying to decide, if they would watch it together and what they would watch. But all of a sudden, there were people calling saying a lot from partners of men who had gotten into porn heavily, and they were saying their marriages were breaking up, or they were canceling their plans to get married.
So you would find it was primarily the women who were calling up saying that the men were into the porn.
Yes, I mean, a lot. Sometimes I'd get men calling up. Sometimes single men saying, I don't know what's happening to me, but my whole sexuality is changing, and I'm scared. And I've gotten into looking at things and masturbating to things that I never thought I would in the past. And I'm hearing more and more of this in recent years, too.
The thing is, with the Internet and something else we've noticed here at our program in Human Sexuality, the same questions about porn that you've received, and also a complaint that we used to hear pretty rarely. A complaint we get often from women is they have a hard time reaching an orgasm. But that had been a very rare complaint for men, unless they were ill or really getting very much up there in their late 70s, 80s, really. And even though they couldn't climax as quickly at that age, they could pretty well climax. And with the watching of porn, that was a problem that came up more and more, and the answer really was that the men were masturbating.
To pornography.
Yes.
Not to just thoughts of their partners or past pleasurable sex experiences they had had. But there is something about this product that can desensitize a person and desensitize their sexuality. It's kind of like an overstimulation. Somebody I heard likened it to putting jet fuel in a lawnmower. And it just kind of can burn things out, pretty quickly. And then people, it causes, in the brain, it causes a dopamine dysregulation in a similar way that eating a lot of junk food might, or high-fat food, high-sugar food, or having hard drugs can. And then what can happen is then the person finds themselves being less able to get stimulated by the kinds of things that they had been prior to this very intense conditioning and training in overstimulation.
Well, there are two alphabetic acronyms that are applied to overuse of Internet porn, and one is ACE, and it's accessibility and convenience and escape, and the other is AAA, and that's accessibility and affordability and anonymity.
Mm-hmm.
But a question that I'd like to ask you is, does it make a difference as to what the porn is, what the substance is of the pornography, or is it just the porn in and of itself?
It does. It does and it doesn't. Okay, a person can get into, if they get into compulsive use of any kind of strong visual stimulation and accustom their sexuality to a voyeuristic approach to sex where it's very image-based and looking, that can create some problems. But the most serious problems we're finding have to do with people who spin off into content that is what's called like the gonzo variety of porn, the very hardcore.
And just describe, if you would, what that's an interesting word. What gonzo variety is? What does that involve?
It's based on a lot on violence against women.
Uh-huh.
It's where people are used just as objects, and there's like the less common types of sexual interaction, rough blowjobs, rough anal sex, things of
that people don't ordinarily do with
right,
each
and there
other.
are things that I could mention, that could curl people's eyelids. And
So
I'll
let's
refrain
not
from
do
doing
that.
Right, and when you think of it, pornography is a very visual product. It is a very commercial, industry-based product, and it relies on presenting novel stimuli that hasn't been seen before, more intense, more hardcore, this kind of thing. And so, as there's been more pornography out there, the porn makers have kind of vied to create harder and harder stuff. And there are some countries with laws and regulations against these more violent types of porn, but we don't have them in the U.S. And,
what countries do have them? That's interesting.
Well, I know they've been in Australia, I think, and in England, I think, and maybe Canada. I'm not sure.
Okay.
That there have been, I think there are some regulations. I know I traveled up to Canada, and my husband and I, when we go to the motels, we like to see, okay, what's the lineup for the porn here, in the pay-per-view. And it was interesting to note that on some of the major hotel chains will have a different lineup in the United States than in Canada, and what they're leaving out are these more extreme varieties when you get to Canada that you can then have access to here in the States.
You are listening to Sexual Health and Wellbeing. This is Dr. Virginia Sadock on Sirius 114 and XM 119, and I'm director of the program in human sexuality at NYU Langone Medical Center. And my guest today is Wendy Maltz, an experienced sex therapist and author with her husband Larry Maltz of The Porn Trap. And if any of you out there have questions about sexuality or think that your partner may be involved in porn, or perhaps you'd like to get your partner involved in porn and she, because most often a she, is unwilling to do so, why don't you give us a ring? We are at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. Or you can email us at docs@SiriusXM.com. Wendy, when you get these people coming in, either the man saying my sexuality is changing and I'm not happy with it, or the woman saying our sex life is going down the drain, or I've seen him watching porn and he's not coming near me anymore, what are the approaches to help this situation?
Well, often one of the repercussions that happens in couple relationships is that as one person has gotten involved with porn, they've kind of gotten more emotionally distant and into their own kind of secret world with it. It's not something, hey, honey, what'd you do while I went shopping, or let me tell you what I did while you went shopping. It's something that is often surrounded by a lot of dishonesty and deception, And
Is that because the person is secretly ashamed of it?
They're ashamed, or they have promised not to do it, and then have been unable to stay away from porn use. So there's often for the, it's typically a man using in a heterosexual relationship that upsets the female. The women can be affected similarly to what happens when a woman might discover that her husband's been, or male partner's been having an affair. And you have this sense of incredible betrayal, because what's happened is that porn use has become a priority over honesty in the relationship. And so there's this sense that this other thing has, and sexually relating with this other thing, this product, and these images of other women or other people on the internet or in DVDs has become more important than the sexual relating in the relationship. And when people get really into porn a lot, they develop kind of an approach to sex that can be very off-putting to a real-life partner. And a real-life partner can end up feeling kind of used and abused in sex, or ignored, but treated more like an object. And they kind of go, he's not there with me, you know. He's in his own mind, and he often is actually relating to porn mentally while.
And the intimacy is gone.
The intimacy is gone. Porn sex is very different than a love-based and intimacy-based sex. It's it has to do with seeing people as objects, and with this image-based relating, and it's separate from love. It can be very compulsive, and it can focus on kind of using someone or doing something to someone.
It almost makes it sound, as you're describing it, and it's this paradox, a little non-sexual. It's almost as if sexual desire is not driving this, but the desire to feel desire is driving this. The desire to have an orgasm is driving this, but not the desire of just enjoying the interplay between two people.
Oh, definitely. You can look at the type of sexual arousal that goes on when a person's relating with porn is much more like getting drugged. It's an arousal of the whole system. It's not necessarily focused on orgasm. Orgasm can be part of it, but it's often the buzz. It's essentially the release of dopamine that's going on. And you can have dopamine spiking, dopamine coming and pouring into these reward circuitry parts of the brain in similar fashions that drugs do. And so you get the person wanting to kind of maintain that buzz, that high, and people who are heavily into porn will talk about it in much the same way as a drug addict talks about what it's like to take a drug. So it's really kind of using that sexual stimulation to medicate for feelings of depression or boredom, or that are often, and dissatisfaction, that are often ironically created by doing a lot of porn use itself.
So somebody can get hooked into it, really. You are listening to Sexual Health and Wellbeing here on Sirius 114 and XM 119. This is your host, Dr. Virginia Sadock, and my guest today is Wendy Maltz, author of The Porn Trap, The Essential Guide to Overcoming Problems Caused by Pornography. You know, I wonder if some people out there are listening to us and wondering, should I call in and ask about this? This is something that's bothering me. By all means do. This is the time to speak to me and speak to our expert, Wendy Maltz. Porn is something that's talked about sort of sub rosa in dirty jokes, in locker rooms, even I'm remembering a play that ran for quite a while on Broadway, Q Street, and one of the songs in it was about what guys do on computers, and every other line was, and do it to do my emails, do it to do my spreadsheets, and porn, and porn,
right, you're
and
thinking
porn.
of Avenue Q.
Yes.
The internet is
Yes.
for porn, yeah.
Yeah.
There's that song, and it's interesting. Radio is a great medium for talking about these problems and discussing them, because it is a difficult thing often for people to step forward, and the radio provides this kind of this anonymity that can be great for it. We need to be doing more discussion about pornography. People need to be sharing more that they're having problems. It's a very common cause of relationship breakup now.
You mentioned before that it does cause relationship breakup, and I can hear and have heard men saying, what are you talking about? I'm not being unfaithful. This is not a live person. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm here with you. I have no intention about leaving you, and yet the woman does feel so betrayed and deprived.
Right. Well, it is. Women who are in long-term relationships report the use of porn of their partner as cheating. There are some studies that show that. I think it's a third of all women see the porn use as cheating. But if you start parceling that out into women in more long-term relationships, like the more long-term it is, the more committed, the more likely the woman is to see the porn use as a serious threat. So someone might go, I'm dating this guy and he happens to look at porn and not be an issue. But I'm married to this guy, or I'm engaged to this guy who's going to be the future father of my children, or who has pledged fidelity, and then all of a sudden you have a different dynamic there where it really does feel like a competing sexual outlet. And I think this is what I got so amazed as a sex and relationship therapist to hear from people that the porn was actually usurping the enjoyment and the power of sex in a real live relationship. In other words, people can really get into it more at the expense of a real relationship.
Absolutely. We have a caller on the line now here, Lisa from Kansas City. Hello, Lisa. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I had an 18-year marriage that ended because of pornography addiction, and it was probably 4 years into my marriage that I realized, and you could time it with the rise of the internet, that I realized that pornography really was such an issue. And of course, a couple of children, young marrieds, you're going to do everything you can to try and make your marriage work. But, oh, man, it just took over our lives.
Oh,
and
I'm so sorry to hear that.
It was tough. Emotionally absent from our relationship, certainly sexually absent from our relationship. And even though, I probably realized through quite a bit of counseling together and individually, I thought that I was being strong by staying in the marriage, but really I kind of realized I was being weak by staying in the marriage. And really what really brought it to a head was one of my young children, a young daughter, actually found a stash of pornography.
Mm-hmm.
Of magazines or of on the internet or what?
Well, we used multimedia pornography.
Okay.
So this was the magazines that she found at 11,
Yeah.
and that was it.
Yeah, that's a very vulnerable age, and one of the things that happens, of course, is one of the things that happens to us as people as we develop is our first exposure to sexuality is very, very important and has an imprinting kind of effect.
And interestingly enough, I did find out, I thought it was something that had just started shortly after our marriage, but through the counseling, I had found out that it was something he had started at around the age of 14.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was magazines.
Yes.
And then I think really with a number of stresses, like a lot of addictions, kind of really exacerbated it. And then, gosh, with the internet, no getting away from it. And it even was to the point where it was using the internet at work.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused a job loss, of course.
Oh my
goodness!
Yeah, and it was, it was something, it was a choice. At that point, I was ready. I guess I would have to say, my child finding the porn almost did me a favor because, man, it slapped me in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your story, Lisa. As sad as it is, but you sound as though you're doing all right now, which is...
Actually, I would say things have never been better, and I would say the unfortunate thing was I probably going through the divorce, and I did need to eventually kind of level with my children about why I ended up getting divorced. And it was never that, it was never pornography. It was just always talked about as an addiction.
Well, I think you handled that, and I assume you had counseling to do it as well as it could possibly have been handled. And I'm really glad to hear how strong you feel right now, and thank you very much for sharing your story, Lisa. And anyone who would like to call, not necessarily to share a story, but certainly if you would like to, or to ask any questions about pornography or how to deal with it, or what is just normal use of it or excessive use of it, please call us at 1-877-NYU-DOCS. That's 1-877-698-3627. You're listening to Dr. Virginia Sadock on sexual health and well-being, and my guest today is Wendy Maltz, the author of the very interesting The Porn Trap, The Essential Guide to Overcoming Problems Caused by Pornography. And I'd like to go to our next caller now, who is Denise from Washington, D.C. Hi, Denise.
Hi. Thank you so much for taking my call. It's been really interesting listening to the previous caller because I have friends that are in this trap, and they have very young children, and we were talking, and they kind of just seem to be stuck in not knowing how to move forward and get the right kind of help or what kind of helps are out there. I would say neither one of them are big fans of counseling, so I just didn't know what options were available and if we could talk maybe about moving forward and solutions.
Sure. Wendy, what would you suggest?
Well, because pornography problems is a very difficult topic for a lot of people to talk with their doctors, their family, their friends, and all, and even for a counselor. That's why my husband Larry and I wrote The Porn Trap as a starting point, because it shares a lot of stories of people who got into porn, found out they had a problem with it, and then a whole half of the book is devoted to what it takes to overcome these problems, both as an individual and as a couple. And then it also has a whole big resource section on the that gives information on the online resources as well as programs and other books. And how to find counselors in it. But, a lot of people combine some counseling with like a 12-step program with Sexaholics Anonymous. But, you've got to start somewhere. So just getting really informed about what this is. Pornography does not come with a warning label. Like, we have drugs, and you get a whole page of information of the possible
or a package
side
of
effects.
Cigarettes.
Yeah, but there's nothing that really says, hey, this is a product that can destroy relationships. It can impair and harm a person's self-esteem and integrity because of the lying and deception that goes on, and the being focused on something that goes often against a person's values, being attached to something that makes a person have to act in conflict with the actual goals they have, and that it is addictive, and that there are serious problems, like the woman before Lisa who had called in, not only the family disruption, but also getting into losing a job or legal problems. Let's say if someone gets into accessing child pornography, things like that. So, yeah.
When you say it's addictive, is it like addictive in the sense that you can trade that addiction for smoking, or you continue to? So from an addictive personality perspective,
some people.
So like some addictive people, quit smoking and take up drinking, and then quit drinking and take up drugs. Are we looking at it's just that continuous of a vicious cycle?
Well, it can be used like I've heard of people who've quit drinking and then got into porn for their high. But often, pornography problems do often start when a person is younger and are exposed to pornography in adolescence, and it's often something that a person does bring into a relationship.
I think here one of the things that you mentioned, Wendy, would be very helpful, which is you can look at the porn as an addiction, and you can go to the 12-step program, Sexaholic Anonymous, Love and Sex Addicts Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, and you can also have individual counseling that when you get rid of the symptom, which is you trying to abstain from looking at the porn, you can in counseling address, so you don't get into another addiction, you can address what's making you so vulnerable to it, what's making you depressed, what's making you anxious.
Yes, and a lot of people have that's a good point, but a lot of people have very strong rationalizations about pornography. Our culture has put those out for years, and it was a lot of them are based on what porn used to be like. We didn't think of it as an addictive product, but the way it's delivered now is similar to, it's delivered on what's called an interval ratio system, and when you get on-demand porn online or through cable, you've got the person, just like a gambler in Vegas playing the slot machines is looking for those 777s coming up on the slot machine, all 3 sevens in a row for the to win. And what happens is people will peruse pornography looking for that particular image that gives them that dopamine high, that spikes their system, gives them a boost of a feeling of sexual arousal. And they don't know when it's coming, but they know if they keep looking, they'll eventually find it. So they can stay at it for a long time. And it's very similar, runs a course similar to like a gambling addiction. And so this is a product that kind of morphed, and also with it, how it's more extreme and more violent and more against loving relationship scripts. You have a product that's really something different than it was before. But our culture hasn't caught up. They're still thinking of, oh, it adds a little spice to the relationship, or oh, this is just something I use to help with self-stimulation at times, or self-pleasuring.
But it's really changed enormously. Our next caller is Samantha from California. You're on the air, Samantha.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm not sure if our relationship has a porn problem. I've been together with my husband for about 13 years. And at first, when the internet first started, I guess, is when it really, I was okay with it at first. We were, just dating. And then after a few years, he began to lie to me about how often he would look at porn. So that was a struggle for a few years until, he, I guess, realized that it was worse to lie than to actually do it. So, we were okay for a few years. Now we've had a few kids. But he still looks at porn pretty much every chance he gets if I'm not home.
You sound like you're crying, Samantha. I am so sorry. That's all right. Take a deep breath and go ahead.
So, sorry.
No. We all understand, and everybody who's listening understands.
So basically, I don't know if I'm being too unrealistic, to ask him not to do it at all or not to do it as often. He doesn't lie about it anymore as far as I can tell. But just the images that I know he's looking at really bother me, and he doesn't seem to understand that. My feelings about it, he's like, well, you shouldn't feel that way about it. So I'm not sure what to do. And part of me, I was pregnant, I had 2 kids, one right after the other, and a lot of my time was taken up by that, so I kind of don't really think about it. And so now I'm not into sex as much as I used to be. I also don't care as much as I used to about his viewing porn, but I think that's detrimental to our relationship. So basically, I don't know if I'm being unrealistic with my expectations or he has a problem with porn.
Wendy, would you like to answer that first?
Yes. Well, I really feel for what you're going through. The partners of people who are heavily into porn often feel the powerlessness that you're feeling and the confusion about it. And the thing is, if you say nothing, or you tolerate it, you do run the risk, and it seems like it's happening, of your relationship deteriorating further, and you're losing more and more respect for him and sexual interest in him and other aspects of your relationship, trust and all those things kind of dying and dismantling. So it is I think it can be helpful to think of it in terms of him having an addiction, and that there is he's medicating with it. If somebody cannot easily stop it and just say, hey, I'm sorry it's bothering you, I'll give it up, and they're really attached to it, they can be attached to it in a biochemical way similar to a person who has like a cocaine problem or methamphetamine. And so to just say, will you give this up, if you were to say that to a drug addict, we think, oh, that would be a very hard thing to expect. So much depends on the person with the problem recognizing that they have a serious problem and deciding that they want to move away from porn on their own, coming to that realization. People don't quit porn successfully if they have a serious problem with it just because the partner's upset about it. They often need to get to a place on their own where they say, oh my goodness, I'm going to lose all these things. I'm going to lose my wife, I'm going to lose my kids, or I'm going to lose my jobs, or I'm losing my integrity or my connection with my faith because of pornography, and I'm not willing to give that much of myself up for this product. But he doesn't sound like he's there yet or sees it as a problem. Right. When he turns on you and says, get over it, this isn't a big deal, you need to stick with your guns about how you feel about it, and that it isn't something you can just accept or integrate into the relationship. It is that it goes against so much of it's having such a harmful effect. In counseling, what's great about doing some couples counseling in situations like this is you can, when I'm working with a couple, I'm often working to help each party understand the other. So there's an opportunity for the man who's using porn to talk about how he got into it and what it means to him and what his experience has been over time with it, what his own concerns are about himself with it, if there are concerns there, and how he sees it. And then for the woman to talk about what porn means to her and what she sees the changes going on over time, and them to really work to understand each other better. The solutions often come when there's this deeper understanding, and you work against kind of fighting about it and more, just looking at it realistically. How's it operating for one person? How's it operating for the other person?
And,
Right.
I think, Samantha, the question you've asked, are you being unreasonable? No, you're not.
Right.
The fact that you're absolutely hurting the way you are, and he doesn't see this. There's a withdrawal, a denial on his part that comes from some distortion or some problem that he has. And I think Wendy, in talking to you, has really implicitly made the suggestion, which I would explicitly make, which is that you can say to him, rather than stop the porn, yes, I'd like you to stop it, I would, but you think I should just go with it, and this is something that we're just going to have to deal with, and not by ourselves. It seems to me we need some professional counseling help.
Right. And I have brought that up in the past, probably 6 years ago, like I said, before I, started having kids, and they're now my priority, at least when they're this little.
How old are they, Samantha?
They're 3 and 5.
Yeah.
So, and his answer was, I don't have a problem, I don't need counseling, which, that's, I'm assuming the typical addict behavior.
Denial,
I'm also, I'm not unwilling to do, for him to look at any porn, but it's just the images sometimes that are online, and I think now he's getting into watching the live sessions, which is something that he had never done before.
No, it gets worse and worse.
It will,
does.
and it will. You're actually doing him a big favor by saying, no, what you're doing is unhealthy and harmful to you, to us, and you need help.
And
the more firm you are, actually, by saying, well, you can look at a little of this porn, you might be giving a mixed message, so you may need to get really clear on what your stance is.
I think you can say, you may not feel it's a problem, but I do. And if I really feel it's a problem for us. And let's go to see somebody. Maybe they'll tell me it's my problem, but that much you have to do for me, and you have to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck, Samantha.
I would wonder what he would be willing to sacrifice for the relationship. If he feels that when a person starts seeing that their porn use, and they recognize their porn use has become more important than their marriage or than their mental health in other ways, then they can start getting to that place where they recognize something needs to be done.
Let's go now to our next caller, who is Susan from Missouri. Hi, Susan.
Hello. I think maybe some of I've gotten some answers.
Good.
It's my 36-year-old son who has been addicted, and we keep wondering, why is he not marrying? And the more I hear about this addiction, I can see why. But as a mother, there's very little I can do, except I got the book Porn Trap, and who's that by?
That's by our guest, Wendy Maltz. You're talking to the author.
Yes. Well, okay, Wendy, what's the last name?
Maltz, M-A-L-T-Z.
M-A-L-T-Z. Well, that's the start, because, see, as a mother, there's nothing much I can do. But we just, his twin brother, attended a seminar, a workshop about this and how it affects his hormonal the inability for him to have the hormone that helps develop relationships.
Yeah, oxytocin and the bonding hormones.
Yes. And so his brother brought it to our attention, and we always were wondering, oh, gosh, I think this is what's keeping him from being able to marry. But, he's 36 and has his career, and he seems to be happy. But every time we have family gatherings, his focus on sex is almost embarrassing for me. And it's like, you can't tell him because then he feels like you're criticizing him.
Well, you are, but it's all right.
Well, yeah, but it's new for me how to deal with this as an addiction. So I thought, well, could I get him the book? You think that would help? Or what could the family, his dad, his brother, what could we do? Because right now he would not acknowledge that it's a problem.
Is his brother close to him?
Well, they're twins, but
are they identical twins?
No.
Yeah.
No, and when they were growing up, the one who has the problem would refer to his brother as the perfect son.
Oh, dear.
Because the one who has the problem was also had about 4 years of drug use. Yeah. And then he finally turned his life around. But I think what's happened, from your show, he has substituted addiction, or the pornography for the drugs.
I think somebody's got to talk to him, and I think it might be whoever is the person he's most likely to listen to. Is his dad.
Yeah.
Then his father is the one that should talk to him, and his father can start out by saying, I'm really concerned. Not you have a problem, but I'm really concerned, and this is what is concerning me, and this is what I've seen. And he can say, I am so proud of what you've done in terms of overcoming drug addiction, but I think you're using the same kind of mechanism in a different way. And just sort of keep at it. You cannot, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But you do have, as a parent, the desire, the obligation, and I think the opportunity on your husband's part to talk to him.
Read the book? Should he read the book first?
Yes, I would recommend that your husband read the book, and then you can suggest somebody read a book, but you can't make them read it. I mean, you can say, here's a book, I've read it, I found it helpful in understanding, what you might be going through. I'll just leave it with you if you want to read it, fine, or now or at some point in the future. It might be something that you choose to look at. I have had people contact me and say that a relative gave them the book, The Porn Trap, and they then recognized themselves in it and saw what was happening to themselves and realized they had a problem. But, I don't think it's that easy. Just like with any other drug use, often it can take several years of having negative consequences or people sharing their concern until the heavy porn user recognizes that what they're doing is harmful to themselves and that they want to stop.
We do have a caller now that might be interesting for you to hear too, Susan, because we've had a lot of women calling up, but we do have a caller, Brian from Texas, on the line, and it would be interesting to hear from him. Hello, Brian. Thank you for calling.
Hello, and thanks for taking my call. I've enjoyed your program, and there's a lot of good advice there, and I hope a lot of people are listening to your advice.
Thank you. What can we do for you?
Well, I have been, I would say probably addicted to porn for some time, and probably 6 months ago, I decided to, I got rid of sort of my secret stash. I had about 25 DVDs, and I cleared all the sites out of my computer, and I stopped doing all that, and I, was upfront and honest with my wife about the problem that I had, and I told her that I really didn't want to be addicted to that anymore, because I really began to feel sort of separated, not only from her, but separated from myself and my values. And I just really began to feel out of control.
Good for you to recognize it, Brian. Good for you. Go ahead.
Yeah, the question I have now is that I really want to. My wife and I have used porn occasionally together, and we enjoy that. But I've spent so much time on websites looking at DVDs and stuff that I find sometimes just normal sex without the addition of porn can be a little boring and vanilla, and I don't want it to be. I want there to be more intimacy and more connection and more closeness. And and I've been married to my wife now for 23 years, and we were together for 6 or 7 years before that. So I've been with her since I was 16, and I love her very much, and I want her to know that she's everything to me. I want to ask a question about how to reestablish some intimacy and kind of get over the. It hasn't been easy giving this up.
Yeah. In the Porn Trap, there's a whole chapter devoted to learning new approaches to touch and sex. And they, there's one exercise called Looking with Love, where in pornography, it's so much looking at the porn for stimulation of what's coming into your eyes. Looking at with love involves looking at your partner and feeling the caring you have from your heart actually come up and go out of your eyes as you gaze. It's learning a love gaze. And there's also exercises called heart anchoring, where you feel your caring as you touch and receive stimulation to your genitals or just to skin. There's a lot of what porn doesn't show, kind of how to integrate emotional feeling and sensuality in sex. So learning how to do that can be very helpful. Some couples I've talked with said that they've gotten into tantric sex practices or karezza. They've learned about some of these methods for integrating feeling, emotional feeling, and more full body sensuality and awareness in sex. So you can go that route, but if you're looking for a strong kind of adrenaline-filled punch with a strong kick kind of sex, I think there is some recognition that it's probably, it may happen from time to time on occasion with your wife, but it this kind of sex, it's more. It's different than the kind of sex that porn delivers. Porn delivers a very high stimulation, is often adrenaline-fueled kind of sex because it goes with the images, sort of the outer limits of what we're comfortable with or shock value.
Right.
And this, and even the fear of getting caught can come in there, or doing something naughty or looking at something naughty. You don't get that in love-based sex. But what you can get are some of these deeper, fuller satisfactions where you can learn to tune in more to the attraction and early stages of arousal, or the heightened stages in the plateau stage of the sexual response cycle, and also how to enjoy orgasm where it has a meaningfulness involved in it, and then the afterglow, to appreciate that as well. So there can be these deeper satisfactions that are more based on nurturing touch and soothing. Porn it stimulates the appetitive kind of interest in sex, but it doesn't really give the deeper satisfactions that love-based sex can. And the longer you're away from it, the more your body and your brain will readjust. This is the good news we're hearing, is that people who quit porn and actually really stay away from it, they don't re-stimulate with it every now and then, but they completely give it up. And then that they do readjust, and then they find themselves learning these new dimensions of sexual pleasure and enjoyment. And and then I get people writing in saying that they have they never thought that sex could be such a full pleasure, because there's nothing negative that happens afterward. Afterwards,
Right.
they don't feel shame. They feel just
Right.
a higher self-esteem, closer, more connected if they're with a partner, and they haven't had to give anything up. So I'd just kind of stick with it, but don't expect the same kind of high stimulation or punch that porn delivered. And you have to
Okay, well,
grieve the loss of that. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much for calling us, Brian. And I think that was a wonderful explanation, Wendy. You're listening to Sexual Health and Wellbeing. This is Dr. Virginia Sadock, Director of the Program in Human Sexuality at NYU Langone Medical Center. And my guest this hour has been Wendy Maltz, author of The Porn Trap, The Essential Guide to Overcoming Problems Caused by Pornography. And thank you so much for joining us today, Wendy. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
My pleasure, and best wishes to everyone.
Thank you.